Hello, 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 and welcome back to yet another NFL mock draft video. I think this is part 9, if I'm not mistaken. It's not mock draft Monday, it's mock draft Wednesday because obviously I had to record the Super Bowl video immediately after that game. It actually is technically Monday when I'm recording this, so I'm still keeping in tune with the theme there. But yeah, man, it's been 2 weeks since the last one, and I was trying to decide should I do the 2 round mock draft today or a 1 round mock draft with trades today. And I decided to go with the 1 round mock draft with trades because there's some interesting things I think we can cover here. I got some orange juice with me, so let's get right into it. Thank you for watching, of course. Hope you are having a great day, man. All right. So with trades now, what does this mean? Who was going to trade for what? For the first trade, we are going to have the Las Vegas Raiders, a team in desperate need of a quarterback. New head coach now with Pete Carroll taking over. So we're going to have the Raiders trading the number 6 pick, a first rounder next year, and a second rounder in 2027 to move up 5 spots, and they will get a first from the Titans and a third next year. Let's just say whatever the case may be hypothetically. So the Raiders give up 2 first-round picks and a future second-round pick to move up 5 spots and get a third-round pick in the future. I think that's a fair trade. The Titans, I've been seeing a lot of news lately. Listen, I still think it's a lock that the Titans keep the pick and take a quarterback. But we're going to explore a hypothetical scenario where they are stupid and they trade this pick. So, forced trade. The Raiders are now in possession of the number 1 overall pick. Let's start the draft here. Who would they take? Well, it's obviously for a quarterback. You don't move up here unless you have a quarterback in mind. Who would that be? Between Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, those are the only 2 guys who I think have a real shot of going in the first round at this point. If you're curious of just who my top 5 QBs are, obviously for me personally, it goes Cam Ward, then Shedeur, then Jalen Milrow. Listen, he was in everybody's top 5, top 10 when he was playing well early in the season. The second half of the season, he completely tanked his draft stock. I still think, listen, if we're being honest with each other here, Jalen Milrow is further along in the process right now than Jalen Hurts was coming out of college. And it entirely depends on the situation you go to, the quality of the front office, the amount of talent they put around you, the coaching staff. All these things matter. And you see when the Eagles took a shot on Jalen Hurts, they were heavily criticized. They still had Carson Wentz at the time. But Jalen Hurts has now developed into one of the premier quarterbacks in football, and it's all because of the amount of talent they've put around him. So I am confident that if Jalen Milrow goes to a right situation, he can also be a very good winning quarterback. But I do not think he's a first round pick. He's my QB3. My QB4 right now is going to be Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. QB5 is going to be Quinn Ewers, and then QB6, I guess, is going to be Dylan Gabriel as like a wild card in the fourth, fifth, sixth round. I just don't love his size at the position. And if you're going to be that small, I think you kind of got to be like Kyler Murray, where your legs are a significant factor. Dylan Gabriel can move, but he's not like Kyler Murray. So he's kind of just too small and not mobile enough to be in my top 5. I think he'll be a day 3 pick for sure. But, anyways, Raiders number 1 overall pick. I'm going to go with Shedeur Sanders. I'm just going to assume that Pete Carroll likes Shedeur Sanders a little bit more than Cam Ward. It's entirely subjective. You know, they absolutely could go Cam Ward in this scenario, but I feel like I've seen Shedeur linked to the Raiders more than I have seen with Cam Ward, that's for sure. So, Browns here at number 2. You would think with Deshaun Watson being, re-injuring his Achilles, it is like a 99% certainty that he will not play next season. Um, you would think the Browns here would be confident in taking a quarterback, but I'm not done with the trades. We're going to say that the Browns don't want to take a quarterback here and they move down. Who wants to move up, though? I'm going to say that the Giants move up 1 spot. They're that desperate to get a quarterback that they would trade the number 3 pick to move up 1 spot, and they'd also give up a second round pick and a third round pick to move up 1 spot. Is this unrealistic? Not really. We saw the who was it? It was the 49er. It was the Bears to move up 1 spot. They gave a haul to the Niners a couple years ago to move up and draft Mitch Trubisky. So it's not really that unrealistic. Let's force this trade. The Giants move up 1 spot and they look to take Cam Ward out of Miami. He is my number one quarterback in the class. Some differences between him and Shedeur. I really don't like the way Shedeur handles pressure. And listen, he has had a terrible offensive line at Colorado. It was better in 2024 than it was in 2023, both of which were still bad. But I just a lot of QBs have bad offensive lines. I think Shedeur makes more than usual an amount of mistakes under those circumstances. I don't like all the intentional groundings. I think he rolls out of the pocket prematurely. I think he just makes I think he panics as soon as he sees pressure. I think he takes a lot of unnecessary fumbles as well. So it's just every quarterback deals with pressure, but I think Shedeur does not deal with it as well. But I do think he's very accurate, has a good arm, and those are the two most important things, really. I think he does have some good mobility. Not great, you're not going to call any design QB runs for Shedeur, but I do think he's going to be able to get 20, 30, 40 yards a game, maybe just with his legs, in some scramble type situations. Cam Ward, on the other hand, I think is a more uh, polished pocket passer. I think he's older than Shedeur, so that helps. I think he does have a better arm. I think he is more prone to make explosive plays. And I think he deals with pressure better, but I just overall think his decision making is a little bit worse. I think he definitely tries to extend the play too often when it's not there. I think Cam Ward definitely needs to learn how to either check the ball down, pick up 1 or 2 yards with his legs, or just throw the ball out of bounds. All these hero type plays are not going to work at the next level. We saw that a lot with Caleb Williams, putting himself into bad situations when he didn't have to. So Cam Ward definitely needs to get out of that, but I do think he's the best quarterback available in this draft. And I think the Giants would be very lucky to walk away with him if they were to somehow get their hands on him. Now the Browns, they trade down one spot. Why is that? Probably because they want to get a guy like Travis Hunter in town. I also think Abdul Carter could be on the board. I've seen a lot more people talk about Abdul Carter as a generational type talent. Um, I don't really understand that. I mean, because before the season ended, I didn't hear hardly any of those talks. But now that the season's over, suddenly he's a generational talent. So I'm not hating on Abdul Carter, but I think the amount of praise he's getting postseason is a little bit questionable to say the least. But for the Browns, taking Travis Hunter at number three, I think for the Browns, he would be a primary cornerback. He would play a boundary corner, most likely alongside Denzel Ward. Maybe you move Martin Emerson to the nickel if he's not already there, and then he moonlights at wide receiver alongside guys like Jerry Jeudy on Cedric Tillman. So that's probably the best case scenario for the Browns right there. Uh, the Patriots at number four. And as far as the Browns go, I guess they would just look somewhere else in terms of what they would do at the quarterback position. Maybe they bring in a vet and try and make the playoffs, or they bring in a young guy and try and develop him. I have no idea what they do here, but it's very possible that they don't draft a quarterback. So we have to explore that possibility. The Patriots at number four here. It's tough, man. It's between Terrell McMillan and Will Campbell. That's what it's been for me the entire process. Um, I just think it's more likely that they're going to get a guy like T. Higgins via free agency or Debo Samuel or whoever. Get a free agent wide receiver, then you're going to be able to get a guy like Will Campbell. So we're going to draft Will Campbell here for the Patriots at number four overall. Patriots, it's really only a handful of possibilities where they could go, but there's very compelling cases for each of those guys. Jaguars at number five. I've gone a lot of different directions for the Jaguars. For this particular case, I'm going to go with Mason Graham out of Michigan. I think the potential lineup of Mason Graham, Eric Armstead, Josh Allen, and Travon Walker could be just a vicious unit on that defensive line. And we could really, see them reinvent that Saxonville type defense, starting first and foremost with the defensive line. So I think I like the vision. I really do like the vision there for the Jaguars. Obviously, they could go cornerback or offensive line, but I think Mason Graham there, it's an exciting possibility. The Titans at number six, I'll go ahead here and give them Abdul Carter. Um, you already got guys like Harold Landry. Is it Justin Simmons or Jared Simmons or Jeffrey Simmons? Jeffrey Simmons, Harold Landry. You got guys already. You drafted Devondre Sweat last year. So you got a pretty solid foundation on the defensive line, but you lost guys like Danico Autry. I think Abdul Carter could step in and replace that production and possibly be the new premier player on the Titans defense overall. So they need help everywhere. I thought they had a really, really good offseason last year, but it did not result in wins whatsoever. They have to figure out the quarterback position. I hope this is all just a smokescreen. This is the thing. If you have the number one overall pick, who cares? Just you. I mean, I guess it's always a benefit to not telling people your plans, but it's like, brother, you don't have to lie. You own the first overall pick. If you wanted to tell us what you wanted to do, you could just tell us. So I still think they're going to draft a quarterback, but if they did want to increase their amount of draft capital, they could trade back, draft Abdul Carter, and then maybe trade back into the first round and take a guy like Jalen Miller. Who knows what they could do? The Jets at number 7. I'm almost confident Aaron Rodgers will not return to the New York Jets moving forward. So they're going to have to address quarterback somehow. I don't think they're going to be able to do it at number 7 right here. So what do they do instead? Well, I think bringing in a guy like Will Johnson to play boundary corner for you could be very interesting, especially considering DJ Reed is a free agent. So I think you're going to need another boundary corner to play next to Sauce Gardner, who had a very big down year compared to how he started his career. So Will Johnson, put him on the other boundary next to Sauce, and you replace and possibly upgrade at corner over DJ Reed. Panthers at number 8. It's going to be Terry McMillan for me. No other option. I mean, no Mason Graham on the board, no Abdul Carter. Terry McMillan is a no-brainer for me. Just picture the potential offense. We saw how good Bryce Young was at the end of last season. Now picture a healthy Jonathan Brooks and Chuba Hubbard in the backfield. Tedoroy McMillan and Xavier Legette on the outside. Adam Thielen in the slot. Jalen Coker rotating in and out. And then Jatavian Sanders playing tight end. We're talking about a potentially really exciting offense in Carolina next year. I hope they just don't mess that up. And please draft Tedoroy McMillan if he's available. The Saints at number 9. I definitely think wide receiver is a need for the Saints right here. It's too many question marks for them. I mean, who knows if Chris Olave is going to come back and be healthy? Who knows if Rashid Shaheed will heal from his injury? His biggest thing to his whole game was speed. So if he loses a step due to his injury, is he just a completely different player? And who else do they have besides those guys? Nobody, in my opinion. So you need another receiver just to give yourself an option when everybody else is hurt. So give me Luther Burden out of Missouri. A lot of people kind of bailed on Luther Burden this year because there were injuries at the quarterback position at Missouri. So Luther Burden was not able to shine like he necessarily should, but it's not because of a lack of production on his part. It's just they couldn't throw the ball for large stretches this season at Missouri. So I still think Luther Burden is a top 10 overall caliber player, but it depends on the situation. But I think the Saints certainly, if they want to address receiver, Luther Burden is more than worth the number 9 overall pick. Bears at number 10 here. Listen, I think Ashton Jeanty could be really intriguing. Okay. But I still think that offensive line is the most important. I think Ben Johnson understands the importance of building through the trenches and how that opens up everything else. And DeAndre Swift's a really good back. I mean, if you put him behind a really good offensive line, I think he's a guy who, if healthy, could produce, 14, 1,500 yards in scrimmage. So I don't think you have to draft running back here. Give me offensive line. Give me Kelvin Banks out of Texas, and I'm fine with that all day long. I'm sure the Bears fans would be very happy with that. Niners at 11. Man, you could go wide receiver. You could go offensive line. You could go defensive line. You could go secondary. I mean, you could make a case for the Niners drafting every single position except quarterback here. Even Ashton Jeanty, I think, would be interesting just due to McCaffrey's injuries and how good the Niners are when it comes to running backs. How good could an Ashton Jeanty be, especially paired with a Christian McCaffrey? You could put both of them in the same backfield at times. So, but that's not what I'm going to do right here. I think offensive line still is the most pressing matter for the Niners. So draft Josh Simmons, play him at right tackle until Trent Williams is no longer there, then possibly move Josh Simmons over to your starting left tackle. I think that's what the most sensible spot here, or most sensible pick is for the Niners at number 11. Cowboys at 12, no brainer, Ashton Jeanty. If he's there for the Cowboys, they have to draft him at number 12. And here's the thing. I understand that Rico Dowdle had a very good year last year, but it's the same thing with the Falcons and Tyler Algier. You don't pass on a Bijan Robinson, Ashton Jeanty type player because you have a Rico Dowdle or a Tyler Algier. And it's no disrespect those guys. Rico could still be a really good role player for the Cowboys moving forward, just like Algier is for the Falcons. But If Rico Dowdle can put up, what did he put up? 1,300 yards from scrimmage this year. I'm confident that Ashton Jeanty could put up 17, 1,800 plus on top of Dowdle potentially adding in 8, 900 as a role player. So Ashton Jeanty could completely revive the Cowboys offense next year. Dolphins at 13. I've gone Malachi Starks here a lot. Um, I'm going to explore offensive line. I understand that Javon Holland might be leaving, but let's say hypothetically they keep him in free agency. So safety is no longer as big of a need. So let's go offensive line. Let's draft Armand Membu out of Missouri, right tackle primarily, but I think he has a lot of upside moving to guard or just sticking at right tackle. Who knows what the Dolphins want to do? They got Patrick Paul out there right now. Teron Armstead is getting older. You might want to look to replace him. So Armand Membu gives you a lot of flexibility and options moving forward. Colts at 14. This is one of the biggest no-brainers for me. The Colts offense is missing a reliable safety blanket check down for Anthony Richardson. I'm not ready to give up on AR. They have not fired their coaching staff yet, so they're still rolling with AR as far as I'm concerned. So give me Tyler Warren to the Colts. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. If the Colts draft Tyler Warren, then there is no excuses for Anthony Richardson. You would have 4 receivers. You would have Jonathan Taylor, and then you have an amazing prospect at tight end. If AR messes it up next year with all those guys at his disposal, then you'll know for sure it's time to move on. Falcons at 15 here. It's going to be a defensive line, and I'm not going to consider anything else the entire draft cycle for the Falcons. It just has to be defensive line here. The question is who, of course, and I could see potentially defensive tackle on the board as well, but I'm primarily looking to the edge. I gave them Mike Green last time out of Marshall. Certainly, I think he is more than good enough to go in the top 20. It just depends on what you like, really. I mean, there's so many options. Have said it ad nauseum now that defensive line primarily is the biggest strength of this entire draft class. Um, I'm gonna give him James Pierce out of Tennessee. Was the number one overall pick several months ago in terms of projections. He had a good season at Tennessee. I think there's just a little bit of a size concern for James Pierce. He's a little slim for an edge rusher. I think there are concerns about how well he'll hold up in the run game. But I think the Falcons, they have to take a shot on a guy like him because the upside is definitely there. Cardinals at 16. I've gone defensive line a lot for them, especially D tackle. But I think interior offensive line is something that we should consider because outside of Paris Johnson, I don't know if they have anything that they're confident in at that position. So we're going to look around here, and I think I'm going to give them Tyler Booker out of Alabama. I've seen his name thrown out there a lot as potentially the best pure guard in this cycle. And if that's the case, and you're looking at a team like the Cardinals who need to improve that offensive line, drafting the best guard at 16, that's not a bad pick whatsoever. So I like Tyler Booker to the Cardinals at 16. Bengals at 17 here. I've mentioned this over and over again. There's really, honestly, the Bengals are in a really good position here because there are so many players that they could draft, and I would say, damn, that's a really good pick. They could draft Malachi Starks. They could draft Emeka Egbuka. They could draft Mike Green or Michael Williams or Walter Nolan. There's so many options here. But when I really sit down and I think about it, I say, okay, the Bengals missed the playoffs last year because their defense and especially their secondary was terrible. The Bengals have to improve their secondary. Malachi Starks is the best DB on the board, no questions asked. I'm going to give the Bengals Malachi Starks because he could start at safety and replace Von Bell or Dax Hill, or he could move to the nickel and replace Dax Hill or Mike Hilton or whoever you want. He could do a lot for this Bengals defense, and I think he's an immediate upgrade at wherever they decide to play him. Seahawks at 18. Listen, I really hope we draft offensive line. Brother, please understand. I really hope we draft offensive line. However, our GM has shown time and time again that he does not value the offensive line like he should. So we're going to explore a different option here. Linebacker has become rapidly a massive need for us. Last season, we lost Jordan Brooks and Bobby Wagner to free agency. I said it over and over again. Seahawks fans, for some reason, were convinced that Bobby Wagner was lost. I was screaming at the top, or he was washed, sorry. I was screaming at the top of my lungs. Bobby Wagner is still a very good linebacker. He is not washed by any means. And guess what? He goes to the Commanders and he helps, and he's arguably the best player on their entire defense. Who would have thought? Me. I wish we would have kept Bobby Wagner. Anyways, we lost him and Jordan Brooks last season, and we traded or cut both of the replacements that we brought in for Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks. Javon Baker, we traded him, I think, and Tyrell Dodson, we cut him. So we lost two linebackers and we got rid of both of their replacements. So we ended up finding two more guys. We got Ernest Jones from the Titans. I think he played well. And then we got Tyrese Knight as a rookie coming up, who I think he showed a lot of flashes last year. But I still think we need another guy in that linebacking room to make it more solidified. So I'm going to draft Jalen Walker out of Georgia. I think his forte is more of a pass rusher. You could line him up in a lot of ways. He is primarily a blitzer who can do some things in coverage, but Jalen Walker's versatility and a guy in Mike McDonald who helped develop guys like Patrick Queen and help fully unlock the potential of a Roquan Smith. I think he could work wonders with Jalen Walker, and Jalen Walker could help just be a wrecking ball on the Seahawks defense. So I like that. If we're not going to go offensive guard, I think Jalen Walker provides a lot of upside there. Um, Buccaneers at 19. It has to be defense here. I think the offense is already elite. Um, I'm going to go with the guy who's kind of falling here. I usually don't have him available at number 19, but I see a Benjamin Morrison sitting right here. And I know the Buccaneers, I'm sure they'd love to improve boundary corner, put somebody next to Jamel Dean because they got rid of Carlton Davis. They lost Sean Murphy Bunting. A lot of the guys that were there from that first Super Bowl run, no longer there. So draft Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame. His season was unfortunately cut short due to injury, but I still think he is a premier cornerback prospect, and he still will go in the top 20, in my opinion. Broncos at 20. Man, this is a tough one. I mean, I think their defense is elite, honestly. I still think the biggest target here would be to give Bo Nix a weapon at the wide receiver position. But I love their group of wide receivers. I mean, I love the potential of Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin, and I think Cortland Sutton had a really good year. So I think tight end is just a glaring need for the Broncos, especially considering that they got rid of Greg Dulcich, who was a former second round pick for them. So Colston Leveland sitting right there. It makes all the sense in the world for me for the Broncos to draft him at number 20. Steelers at 21. I could go wide receiver here. However, I think cornerback has over time become a very pressing need for them. And I see Thorpe Award winner Jahdae Barron sitting right there as a very physical cornerback who's not afraid to come up and tackle. I feel like he embodies the Steelers very, very well. And I feel like the Steelers, they have some options in terms of what they could do at receiver. But I think Jahdae Barron sitting right there is too good to pass up on, in my opinion. Chargers at 22. This could be wide receiver. This could be a running back for them. I think outside of J.K. Dobbins, I think they could improve that running game still. Tight end not really available at this point. I think Gunnar Helm down the board, is a possibility. But I see Emeka Egbuka sitting right there, man. And I think of, Josh Palmer. He's good, but he's expendable. Quentin Johnston, he's shown a lot of flashes, but at the end of the day, he's not living up to the hype. Ladd McConkey, you love what he's doing. Give me Emeka Egbuka, man, on the Chargers. Give me another option for Justin Herbert to get the ball out quickly. That's what he was lacking last year. And you could draft a tight end to be that safety blanket, or you could draft a guy like Emeka Egbuka, who is seemingly always open immediately. So I think that really opens up a lot of possibilities for the Chargers offense going forward. Packers at 23 here. I think wide receiver also is in play for them. I mean, you think of Christian Watson potentially missing most of next year due to injury. You don't know what you got with Romeo Doubs. Outside of Jaden Reed, I think the Packers wide receiver room is really questionable. You also got Tucker Kraft in there as a really good tight end, but I'm going to go edge rusher actually for the Packers here. Rashawn Gary, I don't know what's up with him. I think Lucas Van Ness has shown flashes, but I'd like to get another pass rusher in there for the Packers. So give me Mykel Williams out of Georgia. They drafted multiple Georgia defenders over the years. I think Mykel Williams has uber amounts of potential and upside as a pass rusher. So 23, I think that's really good value there for him. Vikings at 24 here. If you just watch the Rams game, you would think the Vikings have the worst offensive line in football. That's not necessarily true, but perception is everything, and they did not play very good against the Rams defense. So I think offensive line all of a sudden has become an area of concern. So give me hmm, interesting question here. Give me Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. Think Cody Mock in a way, another North Dakota State tackle who probably projects to be more of a guard. I think he could work there for the Vikings, start right away at the guard position. And I mean, just looking at what they did or didn't do, I guess, in the playoffs, offensive line has quickly become an area of concern. Texans at 25. Now, I would have overwhelmingly in the past said offensive line, maybe look to defensive line, but the more I think about it, Stephon Diggs is a free agent. Tank Dell might not play at all next season. So you're looking at all of a sudden the Texans, who went from wide receiver being one of their biggest strengths to needing wide receiver. So we're going to explore that possibility. You got Matthew Golden sitting right there. I think you would want a guy who Stroud can get the ball out quickly to. And by the way, Matthew Golden, I'm not positive about this. He transferred to Texas from Houston. I believe he and Tank Dell were teammates at Houston when Clayton Thune and Tanner Mordecai were the quarterbacks there. So Matthew Golden, he already has that connection to Houston and to Tank Dell. I think I'm connecting some dots here for Matthew Golden to go to the Texans here. I think there's a lot of links there. And, just obviously the Texans needing wide receiver. Matthew Golden had a very big latter half of the season for Texas. Rams at 26 here. I'm going to look at the offensive line, try and protect Matthew Stafford, keep him upright in his final year. The defense played really good down the stretch, but the offense struggled. Give me Josh Conerly out of Oregon, a guy who's been kind of rising up the draft boards as of late. Ravens at 27. I'm not on the same page with a lot of people concerning the Ravens here. I think a lot of people are looking at cornerback as the number one area of concern. I would say offensive line and receiver are things I'd look to before the secondary. I mean, I think the Ravens defense played really well against the Bills. I think it was their offense that struggled. Lamar in parts, mainly Mark Andrews, but are you going to bring back Rashad Bateman? Yes or no? That's up in the air. And even if you do bring him back and you do, get Zay Flowers, do you have a third receiver on that team? I'm not sure you do. So I'm looking at receivers here. Do they have a current big body presence like an Alec Iamanair? I'm not sure that they do. I'm going to go with Iamanair out of Stanford. He's kind of an X factor in this draft. It kind of entirely depends on what type of receiver you want. He can't do a lot of things in terms of being shifty and getting open quickly over the middle of the field. But I think as an outside threat, he could open up a lot of possibilities for the Ravens offense. I think I just said that about somebody else, but I think Alec Iamanair on the Ravens is a real dark horse candidate there. Lions at 28 here. This is going to be edge rusher for me. I'm just going to give him Mike Green, man. Mike Green sitting right there. 17 sacks last year. I don't think size is a concern like some people are thinking. He's a little bit short. I think the arm length is a bit of a concern, but his size in terms of like his overall weight is not, small for the position. I think Mike Green, he has perfected a pass rush style that suits his size, and I think it would translate to the next level. So the Lions taking a shot on him at number 28, I think makes all the sense in the world. Commanders at 29 here. I'm looking at receiver, man. I really am, because let's think about this here. Outside of Terry McLaurin, is there a single receiver, tight end, or running back who you're confident will be on the Commanders 2 years from now? Noah Brown, I don't think so. De'Ami Brown, I don't think so. Zach Ertz, probably not. Brian Robinson, I mean, maybe. I think they want to keep him, but that's not a guarantee. Austin Eckler, probably not. I think all these guys, except for Terry McLaurin, are expendable. So in terms of who do you want on this team going forward, I'm very high on Xavier Restrepo and Trey Harris. I think Trey Harris is more so of the Terry McLaurin build as a downfield threat. I think Xavier Restrepo is a guy to get the ball out of your hands quickly, put him in the slot. I love his upside at the next level. I think he could thrive in a lot of situations. I think the Commanders would be one of those. So Xavier Restrepo to the Commanders at 29. I love the idea of that. Bills at 30. I'm going to go defensive line, man. I'm going to give them Walter Nolan. I just think he could wreak havoc next to Ed Oliver, in between Greg Rousseau and AJ Epinesa. I think Walter Nolan next to Ed Oliver could just be a menacing defensive duo on the Bills D line. Chiefs at 31, obviously just lost Super Bowl. Offensive line's a big issue for them. It really is. And I just feel like you got to take a shot on a guy. You can't keep playing Joe Thuney outside. You need a a prospect at tackle, man. They've drafted multiple, but they just have not worked out. Take a shot on a guy, man. Give me Cam Williams at Texas. He has the size profile that you're looking for an NFL tackle. It's another project guy, but eventually somebody has to pan out, man. You have to hit on somebody so you can have a tackle moving forward, man. That's clearly what held them back in the Super Bowl. The Eagles now Super Bowl champions. What do you do if you're the Eagles? Did they have any weak points on the team? No. Every position group showed up for the Eagles in the Super Bowl, which is amazing. Now, if you look at what you could potentially be losing, you got Milton Williams and Josh Sweat in free agency. I think they're going to bring back Josh Sweat, probably lose Milton Williams, and you're probably going to lose Brandon Graham to retirement. So I do think the defensive line is the area that I'd look towards. So if that's the case, what do? You have a ton of options. I mean, just look around. What do you want here? I'm probably thinking more of an inside guy. I think, listen, Derek Harmon, I believe he led all interior defensive linemen last year in terms of pressures at the D1 level. So just taking that into consideration in and of itself is scary. Then pair him with the rest of the Eagles defensive line and how good they've developed and how good they are. I think anybody on the Eagles defensive line in the first round is a scary sight, and they could really reload quickly there in terms of guys that they could potentially lose to free agency this year. So that's going to be it for my mock draft, part 9, I think it is. I hope that's right. Please leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you are new, and I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.